What is happening in Europe? There has been lots of attacks this year in 2025, causing a lot of death and casualties. And a lot of people are furious and attacking immigrants. Today, we're going to look at the news, why this is happening, and is there any basis to link this to asylum seekers and illegal immigration? Starting off in Sweden, Sweden grapples with bomb violence waves. This is crazy. At the beginning of 2025 has seen bombings carried out on average of one per day. And in 2024, there were 317 total blasts reported by the police. The Swedish Police Authority estimated in 2024 that 1,700 under 18s were active members of criminal networks, which is insane. Sweden, we're talking about Sweden over here. They didn't have these issues a couple of years back. Over here, 12 people injured after a man throws a grenade into a French bar. This happened in Grenoble. We don't know who actually did this. And there were dozens injured in a suspected car ramming attack in Munich. This was carried out by a 24-year-old asylum seeker. Interestingly, he used a Mini to do the attack. And this follows, obviously, the attack that happened in the Christmas market, where more than 200 people were injured in Christmas 2024. Again, that was carried out by a Saudi asylum seeker. And in Austria, there was a stabbing of 6 people that left a 14-year-old boy dead with possible connections to the Islamic State. This was done by a 23-year-old Syrian who also was an asylum seeker. This is causing, obviously, a lot of fear in Europe at a time when there are some elections happening, especially, for example, in Germany, which is next week. Politicians are obviously using this to push all problems as an immigration problem. And before we go into the data of crime and I want to go at UK and Sweden. We have to note that, one, we need to separate legal migration to illegal migration. Legal migration is when countries issue visas to people so that they come to the country, i.e. the government approves of this and wants people to come because they provide certain services, certain skills. It's one way to get the best talent from around the world to come and work in your country. And obviously that helps society, because when you're on a visa, you're not allowed to claim benefits. You are only allowed to contribute and pay taxes. You also, sometimes in a lot of countries, pay extra to use services like the healthcare service. And so it's 100% a net contributor to society. And, a lot of it is to do with working visas, and some are to do with student visas, which they pay much higher fees to the university. In fact, the UK is heavily reliant on international students to subsidize UK students. The other piece is illegal immigration, which usually comes as asylum seekers. Now, we do see that illegal immigration into Europe increases as a war occurs around the world, which means that they are coming from legitimate places. If you see the cases of asylum, they're mostly from Afghanistan, from Syria, from Iraq, and some other African countries. The issue is the number of people coming in. In Europe, we had more than 4 million people come in less than 10 years. Now, even if we assume 99% of them are genuine asylum seekers and 1% want to commit crime, that's more than 40,000 people that intend to commit crime. A lot of these people are coming from places like Syria and Afghanistan, where ISIS operates, where Al-Qaeda operates, that have anti-Western ideologies. And Europe just doesn't have the right infrastructure and enough personnel to vet all those people. The ridiculous thing that actually happens also is when an asylum seeker gets rejected on their asylum, i.e. they've been vetted, which, by the way, takes years sometimes. They've been vetted and they've been rejected, i.e. there isn't a legitimate case for their asylum. They are, in a lot of instances, only asked to leave. They are told you should leave, and they leave it to the person to leave, which is crazy. Obviously, if you're coming from a place like Syria, where things might be improving now, but in the past 10 years, things were terrible, you'll do anything to avoid going back to there. And countries don't really force, in a lot of instances, don't force people to be removed. They ask people to be removed, which means people stay. Now, when people apply for asylum in Europe and in UK, in most instances, they're not allowed to work. They are given some money, which is very little, but still, they're given money, and they are not allowed to do anything. They go to their accommodation, which is in most cases 4 or 5 people in one room, and this could go on for years, which obviously pushes people to crime. What is the impact of that? Are we actually seeing crime increase? Let's look at the data. Now, the government doesn't record crime per, visa application. So we have to look at the crime per 1,000 population and see the change and make assumptions, obviously. What we're seeing over here is a graph where the red is the crime per 1,000 people in England and Wales, the blue is Scotland, and the green is Northern Ireland. And we can see starting from 2002 to 2003, 2002-3, it starts very high, and it starts to decrease as we go down through the years. And it kind of hits a bottom at 2012, 2013. And then it starts to increase from 14, 15, and continues to increase. There's a dip over here because of 2020 COVID, and then it starts to go back up. Now, the whole illegal immigration that was going into Europe and the UK did start around 2015, 2014. We saw huge numbers come in during that period of time. And so this kind of coincides with crime going up per 1,000 of the population. Remember, this is not absolute numbers. This is per 1,000 people. So it's a percentage of the population. When we look at Sweden, we've heard a lot about reported cases of sexual offenses. In 2013, there were around 16,000 reported cases of sexual offenses. And in 2023, that figure is 23,560. That's a 47% increase in reported sexual offenses when the population has only increased by 8% in the last 10 years. So obviously, it doesn't match up to the population increase. That means those that are coming in are carrying out more of those reported sexual offenses as a conclusion. In the UK, it's estimated that there are about 1 million illegal immigrants in the UK alone. And the issue, and I was actually very surprised by this, is that since January 2018, 70% of people arriving irregularly, they say, which means illegally, have been adult males aged 18 and over. I would expect that 70% would be children and women. So you're having a huge number of people come in that are male, above 18, be put in these small rooms, which is great that they're doing that they're actually providing accommodation and giving them some income. But nevertheless, you're getting all these people, putting them in 4, 5, 6 people in one room, not allowed to work. And they have to stay in this for years at times. This pushes, obviously, a lot of people to commit crime. And a lot of people mentioned costs. I looked at the budget, and this illegal immigration does cost the UK £6.4 billion just last year, which is a large number. If you compare that to other figures, the interest on our debt is 107 billion per year. The NHS cost is 192 billion. Compared to those, it's a small number, but it's still 6.4 billion. But here's the issue that I see. My conclusion is that there are obviously genuine asylum seekers coming into Europe, into the UK, coming from war zones. And even if there's a small percentage of them that want to commit crime, it's a large number because of the large amount of people coming in where Europe doesn't have enough of the personnel to process everyone. And at the same time, for those that are committing crimes or those that are rejected in terms of their asylum seeking, they're not immediately deported in a lot of cases. They are asked to leave, for example, when they get rejected. And a lot of them end up staying illegally, but not in the system. The main issue I have with this, aside from obviously the crime that I think will continue to increase, is that politicians are using this to say that this is the main problem that we are facing in Europe and in the UK. It's the illegal immigration. That's why you can't afford a house. That's why things are more expensive. That's why inequality is increasing. That's why the infrastructure is crumbling. And it's simply not true. Just look at the figure of 6.4 billion. Even though that's a large number, it's a drop in an ocean. NHS cost is 192 billion. The reason why the infrastructure is breaking down is because we've had 14 years in the UK of austerity, where the government has told every department to cut costs. at a time when the population is increasing. This happened after the government had to bail out the banks in 2008 and 9, which bankrupted the country. And who had to pay for it? You and I. This is the reason why the infrastructure is crumbling. The main reason. They say it's the immigrants that's causing the house prices to increase. Well, actually, the population increased by 14% during the past 20 years. House prices have increased by, on average, 123%. 123% compared to 14% increase in population. 20 years ago, it used to for someone to buy a house, they needed 3 times their salary to buy a house. Now, they need nearly 9 times their salary to buy that same house because assets have increased so much more than wages because of the policies that the government has, such as money printing, technically by the Bank of England, which is independent. But that has created such a huge divergence between wage increase and asset increase that the majority of people cannot afford to buy housing. You can't come and tell me that it's the illegal immigrants or the immigrants that are coming here and buying these hugely expensive housing. Inequality in Europe and UK will continue to increase because the wealthiest of us, of people, have their money in assets, which increase much quicker than wages. And so there's going to be a continuing divergence between the rich and the not rich. And when inequality increases, crime increases. So yes, illegal immigration seems to be increasing crime. And we need to do a better job at vetting people and taking a stronger stance against those committing those crimes. The reason why we don't have enough police is because of government cuts that have been happening for the past 14 years. The government hasn't invested in the infrastructure, in housing, in prisons, as much as it needs to be. Because we used all the money to bail out the banks. And then we did a similar thing in COVID. So we need to understand that there is a problem with illegal immigration, but also understand that that isn't going to solve the bigger issue we're facing here in the UK and in Europe. Because a lot of politicians are leveraging that point about illegal immigration to say that is the cause of all the problems that we're facing. But when you remove that illegal immigration, say illegal immigration becomes 0, and we gain that 4.6 billion that we're spending on this, we're still going to be facing the same problems because we're not working on the real issues. Let me know your thoughts on this. And if you like this video, do follow and hit the like. Thank you very much.